My kitchen sucks. It was built in the early 1900s, then remodeled in the 1990s, and the list of things wrong with it is so long it would make Ron Jeremy jealous. Well, today I'm going to start the process of fixing all these things on a pretty small budget. My name is John, and this is my money pit. My God, where do I even start? I guess it should be the floors. These are gorgeous heart pine floors that have been used and abused for the last 30 years. Plus, there's been several water incidents in the kitchen, like the sink backing up, the dishwasher overflowing, all kinds of things that have done serious damage to these floors. Several of the boards are cupped and some of them are crowned. They're a nightmare. So these are going to have to be sanded down completely flat and refinished properly. And we got to do something about the color. And then there's this. Some genius decided that the best place to put a return duct for the air conditioning and heating system is directly above the stove. This is quite possibly the worst place you can put a return duct because this is sucking air in, which means it's basically acting like a huge exhaust fan. That's why it stays so brown and nasty. Fortunately, I grew up in a household where my father was the owner of an air conditioning and heating company, so at 14 years old, I was going to construction sites installing ductwork. I can get myself up into that attic and move that return duct from above the stove to the complete opposite side of the room. Next is countertops. Yes, I think this might be the last house in America that still has Formica countertops, and they're the worst. We're going to be replacing these with some type of solid surface. It's going to be the most expensive part of this entire project. Not sure what it's going to be exactly yet, but that is the only part of this project that I will not be doing myself. I got to hire a pro for that. Of course, there's going to be plenty of drywall repairs that need to be done to include the giant hole that's going to be left from moving that return duct and the filling of 1.5 million nail holes that my wife put in the wall to string her vines all over the place. Once all of those are done, we're going to paint it. My wife likes the yellow. I despise the yellow. We're going to come to a compromise and paint it a light gray. It's what everybody seems to be painting their walls these days. Next is probably the biggest part of this entire project, and that is the cabinets from hell. These are the worst cabinets. I'm not going to say where I think they came from, but you can probably guess when you see the quality of them. Now, the boxes of these cabinets, which I refuse to call carcasses, are pretty much fine. I can salvage most of them, and the face frames are also fine. But the doors and drawer fronts, they are unacceptable. They're horrible. They're basically a particle board door that is wrapped in some type of vinyl that over the years has started to peel and fall off. It just looks absolutely horrible. So I'm going to make new doors and drawer fronts for all of the cabinets, including the new cabinets that I build. What new cabinets, you ask? Well, it's all going to start right here with the dumbest cabinet that's ever been installed in any kitchen ever. A 36-inch wide by 24-inch deep by almost 7 foot tall pantry cabinet in the middle of the room. I can't even begin to tell you how much I hate this cabinet. It doesn't belong here. It's in the middle of the room. It's just way too big and overpowers the room. I hate everything about this cabinet, except for the fact that there's plenty of storage in it. So we're going to move that cabinet into another room where we're going to store dog food and cat food into it. There you go. Once that ridiculous monstrosity is out of here, I'm going to build 4 cabinets to put in its place. 2 30-inch wide upper cabinets and 2 30-inch wide base cabinets, and I'm going to build them to match the existing cabinets. And that's not the only cabinet I'm replacing. There's also this special needs cabinet right here that has to come out. It's quite obvious what happened in this scenario. You had a previous owner went to the store and bought a new refrigerator, brought it home and said, "Oh shit, it's too tall, it won't fit in there. So rather than taking that old cabinet out and replacing it with a shelf or just putting a cookie jar up there or something, they decided to just take that cabinet and raise it up 4 inches. It looks ridiculous. I hate it. And it's one of those things that once you see, you can never unsee it. I'm going to take that out. Again, move it into another room where we can utilize it for other things and replace it with an appropriately fitting cabinet. Once all of these cabinets are built, I'm going to build doors for all of the cabinets. So I'll be replacing all of the existing doors and building doors for the new ones so that everything matches. And once the face frames are painted along with the doors, you're not even going to know which cabinets are old and which ones are new. Speaking of new cabinets, let's now address the 800-pound gorilla in the room and talk about this island. This island has to go for a lot of reasons. First, we hate it. The design is dated, it's too big, it takes up too much of the room, the Formica countertops are trifling, everything about this thing is terrible. And whether we like it or not, it still has to go because there's been severe water damage to the base of this island and it's basically crumbling into a million pieces. Now, what I'm going to replace this island with is something very special. I'm going to build an island to completely contrast with the cabinets, and that's going to be built out of reclaimed lumber from this property. The story goes like this. We have an outbuilding on this property that I had to pull the floors out of and replace with concrete to support the aquariums that we have in there. I saved the 2x8 floor joists that are made out of heart pine that are 150 years old. Those are going to be what I use to make this island. It's going to be absolutely amazing. I cannot wait to share that with you. As we watch some glorious double time footage of me dismantling this beast, I wanted to tell you a little bit about the history of this room. My house was built between the years of 1830 and 1845. I don't know for sure what year it was, but I know it was within those years. And when they originally built the house, they would have had an exterior kitchen or a smokehouse. I'm not sure what they called it, but they would have cooked their meals in a separate building from the house and then brought them into the house. Well, in the early 1900s, an addition was put on that connected the house to that original kitchen, and that is the room that we are working on right now. Really good news is we do still have that original kitchen. It's currently being used as our laundry room, and if I'm being honest with you, it is my least favorite room in the house. Not because of the way it functions, but because of what has been done to it. I'm gonna do what I can do to fix the problem. I just don't know when I'm gonna be able to do it or how much it's gonna cost, but I'm having nightmares about it. I had the pleasure of meeting a gentleman that owned this house between the years of 1986 and 2006. And the first thing he told me when he met me was those were the 20 best years of his life. He is the one that did this remodel in the 1990s. So it was originally done in the early 1900s. He completely gutted it and remodeled it in the 1990s. So he's the one that built this island. He's the one that installed the cabinets, and he's actually the one that installed these heart pine floors too. And as you see, as we're doing this, he did put the floors up to that top layer, big wing thing that's on the island. I don't know what you call that thing that I'm getting out of there right now, but it's a big, ugly, elevated part of it. And he ran the floors to that. That is my wife inspecting that void in the floor. And you can see that it was at this moment that she realized, oh no, what has he done? What has he done to my kitchen? No, for real though, she was a good sport about it. She knew that something like this could happen, and I had prepared her for this, so she really wasn't surprised. It was just a perfect camera angle there. But anyway, there is something interesting to talk about here, and that is how stupid some people are. Now, this is not the gentleman that I was talking about earlier that put this island in. No, it couldn't have been him that would have done this. He was too smart for this. Somebody else, after he did that, decided they wanted to put an outlet on the island. And so they ran an electrical wire to it. But rather than run the wire up through the center of that extension area, again, for some reason I'm drawing a blank on what to call that, but that back elevated area of the island, they drilled a hole through the floor in front of the cabinet and ran the wire through the toe kick, and they covered it up with fucking duct tape. I know you think there's no way that could have possibly happened, but I've got receipts. I'm sorry about that. Sometimes I just can't control myself when it has to do with people doing stupid things. But anyway, listen, the new island that I'm going to build is going to be a little smaller than the one that we took out of here. And because there's no flooring underneath some of that, I'm going to have to patch the floor on one end. In order to do that, I had to find more wood. I had to get more of this flooring from somewhere. It's not like we had a stash of it sitting around. So what I did was I cut out the flooring that was underneath the big giant pantry cabinet. It's not a big deal. I'm going to be putting cabinets in its place, so I can remove that flooring from underneath it. I'll have my pieces that I can use to patch the floor. This is something that will come back to haunt me later on. You'll have to watch the cabinet build video to find that out because, yeah, I wasn't paying attention when I got my measurements here. All right, I got my pieces, so it's finally time to actually start making some progress here and getting some work done. It's time to start patching these floors. This is something that is new to me. I've been a woodworker most of my life, but I've never had to patch floors. So in order to learn how to do it, I turned to an old friend, somebody that I grew up with, and I feel like I know pretty well, Mr. Tom Silva. You know, from This Old House. Never met the man, but of course I grew up idolizing him. I loved that show. Him and Norm pretty much walk on water as far as I'm concerned. But I remembered from an old episode of This Old House, Tom doing this, what I'm doing here, taking a chisel and slowly chiseling away at the old piece to get it out of there so that the joints can be staggered and everything else. I remembered seeing Tom do it, so I said, you know what? That's the way I've got to do it. And all due respect, Tom, that turned out to be a huge mistake. Now, in Tom's defense, I don't think there were such things as multi-tools back in those days. I did learn later on in this whole process that the multi-tool is absolutely the way to go. I didn't start out using the multi-tool because in my experience, whenever I use the multi-tool on wood, it just kind of runs wild and goes crazy. I didn't think I was going to be able to get a nice straight line with that, but you'll see in a future video a major mistake that I made that resulted in me needing to patch the floor again. And at this point, I was sick and tired of doing the whole chisel thing. So I tried the multi-tool. I used it on a scrap piece to see if I could cut it straight, and it worked. So for the next patch job, I did the right thing and I used my multi-tool. But for this one, I did it the old-fashioned way, the Tom Silva way. I did it with the chisel, and I regretted every second of it. Love you, Tom. When I got the first piece out of the way, this was the piece that the electrical wire came up through, and I needed to run that back to the middle of what's going to be the new island. And in order to do that, I had to get creative because I can't fit in the crawl space at this point of my house. Basically, my crawl space is about 18 inches. So you're military crawling through there, and there's a massive trunk line for the air conditioning and heating system that goes right down the middle, basically blocking this area of the house. So if I needed to get underneath there, I would have to crawl clear to the opposite end of the house, make a U-turn, come all the way back, and I'm sorry, my big ass ain't doing that. No way ever am I going to do that. So what I did was cut 2 holes in the subfloor. They're about, 24 inches apart from each other. I ran the wire through to one. I pulled it back up and then ran it across to the big wide open hole that was already there and got that wire into the middle. And then I just used the pieces that I cut out from the subfloor with a 2x4 underneath it, patched it right back up again. Once it's all covered up, no one's ever gonna know. With all of those pieces removed and all of the joints staggered, it was time to take those scrap pieces that I pulled out from the other area of the kitchen, cut them to size, remove the tongue on some of them, and remove the bottom of the groove from some of them to get them into place and attach everything in. I used finishing screws to attach them just because it was easy and it's going to hold things in really well. And with this being patches, I wanted something better than just nails to hold them in place. I suppose I could have used construction adhesive and then used nails, but I figured, you know what, I've got the little finishing screws, I might as well just use those, and it worked out really, really nice. The pieces, once they're installed, might not look that great because the color is off and all that, but part of my plan, as we talked about in the very beginning of this video, is to completely refinish these floors. So I will be sanding everything down, and once I do that, all of the color is going to match up, and then once it's refinished, no one will ever know that this was ever even patched. At least that's my hope. So this video was really just an introduction to this project, along with a little bit of the beginning demo and stuff like that. I just wanted to give you an idea of what I've got going on with this kitchen. There is so much more to come. The next video is going to be my way of building cabinets. I watch a lot of woodworking YouTube, and what I see is every woodworking YouTuber is guilty of what every woodworker is guilty of, and that is overbuilding the hell out of everything. I'm going to show you a very simple technique for building cabinets that you could park a Mack truck in these cabinets and they're never going to fall off of the wall. Even my way of doing this is overkill. I'm a woodworker. We all overkill everything to death. It's what we do, but it's a super easy way that it can be done. And I'm going to build these cabinets in my backyard because I don't have a shop. So I'm going to use what I've got. I'm going to set up a temporary location to build these things, and I'm going to show you all of that. We'll build the cabinets and then we'll install them into these areas that need the new cabinets. And then the video after that will be building all of the doors, getting all of that ready, getting those painted and installed. It's going to be a wild ride, and I really look forward to sharing all of it with you. There is so much that needs to be done in this kitchen. I'm a little overwhelmed, but you know what? I'm going to get through it. I love it. I'm not in a hurry to get this done. My wife knew that this was not something that I was going to rush, and I'm trying to make it as easy on her as possible by making the kitchen still accessible. We're still using the kitchen every single day. So hopefully it's easier on her and she won't start to get impatient with me. But anyway, if you want to join along and go on this journey with me, I'm going to suggest that you subscribe. I don't like asking people for that, but I think there's going to be a lot of really valuable information that's going to be in this series of videos, along with several other projects that I've got going on in my house. My house is almost 200 years old, so the list of things that need to be done to it is longer than, well, I said it in the beginning of this video. It's so long, Ron Jeremy would be jealous. If you don't know who Ron Jeremy is, I suggest not Googling him. You might be in for a surprise that you weren't expecting and you might not like. But if you do, sorry about that, but it was just the first thing that I could think of. Anyway, this has been a lot of fun sharing this with you. I can't wait to share the rest of the process with you, and I'll see you on the next one.